Ronald Gene Simmons, Christmas Massacre of 14 Family Members, true crime documentary series. A remote family and a troubled man. In the rolling countryside of Arkansas, hidden among the pine trees outside Dover, sat a crude house made of scrap wood and cinder blocks. No phone, no plumbing, no heating, just a generator for electricity and a handmade sign out front that read, Simmons Family. It was more than a home. It was a fortress, designed by one man to keep the outside world away. That man was Ronald Gene Simmons. Born in 1940 in Chicago, Simmons had a strict upbringing and a long career in the military. He served 20 years in the U.S. Air Force, retiring with distinction. But behind the medals and titles was a controlling and deeply disturbed man. After his military career ended, Simmons spiraled. He moved his wife, Rebecca, and their 7 children across multiple states, each time becoming more isolated and more controlling. Eventually, in 1987, they settled in a remote area of Arkansas, building a compound called Mockingbird Hill. There, Simmons enforced silence, obedience, and total authority. He was no longer just a father. He was a dictator, and no one dared cross him. What no one on the outside could see was that he was preparing to commit one of the deadliest acts of familial violence in American history, a history of abuse and incest. Behind the boarded windows of Mockingbird Hill, Ronald Gene Simmons ruled with absolute power. He forbade his children from making friends or bringing anyone home. The girls were kept especially close. His wife, Becky, had long since given up resisting him. Over the years, she became a shell of who she once was. Silent, defeated, and emotionally broken. Simmons' abuse wasn't just physical, it was sexual. In 1981, his oldest daughter, Sheila, accused him of incest and rape. She told school counselors that her father had been molesting her for years and that she was pregnant by him. Simmons was arrested and charged, but managed to flee before his court date. He took his entire family and disappeared. The charges were dropped, and with them, the last chance anyone had to stop him. Sheila, tragically, stayed with the family. She later gave birth to a baby girl, Sylvia, Simmons' own child and grandchild. Years later, Simmons would kill them both. The first wave, December 22nd, 1987. On the morning of December 22nd, 1987, just days before Christmas, Ronald Gene Simmons calmly began his killing spree. He first killed his wife, Rebecca, by bludgeoning her with a crowbar and then shooting her. Next, he targeted his oldest son, Gene Jr., killing him the same way. He then turned his 3-year-old granddaughter, Barbara. He strangled her with his bare hands. After dragging their bodies into a pit he had prepared outside, he waited. His daughter Loretta and her husband Eddie soon arrived with their children, Eddie Jr., Marianne, and Michael. Simmons killed them all one by one, shooting the adults, drowning or strangling the children. Each body was placed in neat rows, covered with coats, or laid carefully under tarps in the yard. He waited again. His son Billy and daughter-in-law Renata arrived next, along with their toddler son. Same fate, same methodical pattern. Before the day was over, Simmons had murdered 10 people, his wife, children, in-laws, and grandchildren. And then he spent the evening drinking beer and watching television, surrounded by the corpses of his family. The second wave, December 26, 1987. For days later, on December 26, Simmons wasn't done. He calmly drove to Russellville, Arkansas, where he had worked briefly at a law office and convenience store. With him, he brought a .22 caliber pistol and a vengeance list. At the law office, he shot and killed his former supervisor, Kathy Kendrick, who had rejected his romantic advances. Then he went to an oil company office and shot another former coworker, seriously wounding him. Next, he entered the Taylor Oil Company and shot 2 more men, one fatally. Finally, he walked into the Woodline Motor Freight Company. He wounded 1 woman and held the others hostage before calmly surrendering to police. No attempt to run, no suicide note, no resistance. His spree had lasted under 30 minutes in town, injuring or killing 7 more people, bringing the total death toll to 16, including 14 family members. Simmons told police, "I've gotten everybody who wanted to hurt me." Section 5. The trial and sentencing. The courtroom was silent when prosecutors presented the case. They detailed how Simmons had methodically executed each member of his family, including small children and a baby, how he killed his daughter and her child, both as biologically, how he waited in the house, drinking, sleeping, and watching TV with the bodies before starting a second spree in town. There was no question about guilt. Simmons admitted everything. He refused to appeal. In fact, he requested the death penalty and told his attorneys not to defend him. His reason? To spare the taxpayers. But many suspected it was his way of maintaining control, choosing how and when he would die, just as he had chosen how his family would. The court sentenced him to death by lethal injection and 16 life sentences. He was placed on death row at Cummins Unit in Arkansas. Even there, he remained cold, remorseless, and unapologetic. Section 6. Execution and Legacy of Horror. On June 25, 1990, less than 3 years after murders, Ronald Gene Simmons was executed by lethal injection. At the time, it was one of the shortest periods a death row inmate had spent awaiting execution in modern U.S. history. His last words? "Justice delayed is not justice denied." He declined all visits, even from clergy. He rejected a final meal. He died as he had lived, controlling, detached, and alone. To this day, his crime remains the worst single-family massacre in U.S. history committed by one person. 16 people dead. 14 were his own flesh and blood. He didn't just kill them, he planned it. He built graves. He waited. He watched. And perhaps most chilling of all, he never gave a reason beyond bitterness and control. What makes a family annihilator? Criminologists refer to men like Simmons as family annihilators. They often follow a predictable pattern. They feel powerless or humiliated. They crave control. And when their fragile sense of self breaks, they destroy everything around them. But Simmons took it further. His murders weren't reactive. They were strategic, ritualistic, and total. Experts believe his motives were a toxic mix of incest, shame, revenge, and an obsession with control. He couldn't stand the idea of his family moving on, exposing him, or rejecting him. So he erased them generation by generation. Cases like this challenge our understanding of evil. They remind us that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like fathers, husbands, or grandfathers. The Simmons massacre didn't happen overnight. It happened over years of isolation, control, and silence. If there's anything to learn from this horror, it's that abuse doesn't always look violent on the surface. Sometimes it hides in secrecy, forced obedience, and emotional manipulation. If you ever feel trapped in a household where one person controls your movements, your friends, or your voice, that is not discipline. That is danger. Help exists. Speak out. Tell someone, even if it's just one person. Because silence, over time, can cost lives. And sometimes the people who say they love you the most are the ones capable of doing the unthinkable. Comment below. What warning signs did you notice in this case? If you or someone you know is facing domestic abuse, call a local helpline today.